She said, "You'll never be able to afford the life I deserve." So I quietly walked away, rebuilt my world on my own terms, and months later, karma shattered her perfect lifestyle in ways she never saw coming. I am 34, and the first time I met Jessica, it felt like I had stepped into a story that was about to change my life. She had this air of confidence that didn't just attract attention, it commanded it. We crossed paths at a friend's barbecue, both reaching toward the dessert table at the same time, and that simple moment sparked hours of conversation. She said things with ease, laughed in a way that drew people in, and spoke of her travels like she was sharing pieces of a world I had yet to see. The more she talked, the more I found myself wanting to listen. By the end of that evening, I was certain I had found someone rare, someone worth knowing deeply. Soon after, we started spending more time together. At first, it was drinks after work, Sunday brunches that stretched into afternoons, and spontaneous weekend plans that turned into small adventures. She said yes to everything with a spark that made ordinary days feel special. We had late-night drives with music playing softly, explored flea markets hand in hand, and even stood in the pouring rain after a concert because neither of us wanted the night to end. Felt effortless. Felt good. But slowly, differences started to appear, differences I tried to brush aside at first. Jessica grew up surrounded by wealth. She said it casually, not to brag, but as though it was simply the lens through which she saw life. She spoke about restaurants she preferred, trips she had taken, friends who thought flying first class was normal. For me, those things were occasional luxuries, not everyday life. I liked planning for the future, saving for things that mattered. At first, I believed our different backgrounds didn't matter. After all, relationships were about learning from one another, right? Then the comments started. Small remarks at first. She said a boutique had the cutest bags and asked if I had ever flown first class. She said my car was decent, then laughed like it was a joke. I told myself these were just quirks of personality. I wanted to believe that the real Jessica was the one who laughed at my jokes and held my hand on those quiet drives, not the one who weighed everything in terms of luxury. One evening shifted everything. We sat in her living room surrounded by travel brochures and a laptop full of images of villas in Bali, private beaches in the Caribbean, and luxury resorts in Santorini. She said she wanted to try them all, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I suggested something simpler, something more us. A road trip across states, stopping in small towns, having real conversations instead of just posing for photos in expensive resorts. I expected her to laugh, maybe to suggest a compromise. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye, her voice steady and serious. She said, "You'll never be able to afford the life I deserve." The words hit me hard. They hung in the air, heavy and unforgiving. In that moment, I realized she hadn't just dismissed a vacation idea. She had put a price tag on our entire relationship. I felt something inside me shift. Not anger at first, just a crushing weight of realization. She had reduced all my efforts, the thoughtful surprises, the time I made for her, the love I tried to show, into nothing more than a ledger she could judge me against. I asked her what she meant, hoping she would backtrack, hoping she had spoken without thinking. But she didn't flinch. She said calmly that she had standards, that she was raised a certain way, and that if I couldn't meet those standards, then maybe we weren't going to work. I left her apartment that night in a haze. The city looked the same, but to me everything felt different. Her sentence echoed in my head over and over again. "You'll never be able to afford the life I deserve." Not as a joke, not as a passing remark, but as her truth. And for the first time, I had to face the possibility that I wasn't what she wanted. The following morning, I woke up with that sentence still ringing in my head. She said, "You'll never be able to afford the life I deserve." At first, it felt like a dream I needed to shake off. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew it wasn't a slip of the tongue or a heat of the moment outburst. She had said it with conviction, like it was a line she had been holding onto for a while, waiting for the right time to drop it. I spent the day in a fog, going through the motions at work but feeling that tightness in my chest every time I remembered her face when she said those words. It wasn't just a statement, It was a judgment, a declaration that no matter what I did, I would always be less than what she believed she deserved. That weekend, I tried to see if there was still something worth saving. I took her to a small Italian restaurant I had always loved. It wasn't fancy. Wooden tables, checkered tablecloths, a warm glow from the dim lights, and the kind of food that made you feel like family the moment you walked in. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would see the value in something simpler, something real. But the moment we stepped inside, I saw her expression shift. She said, "This is cute." But her voice gave away the truth. She didn't mean it. Halfway through dinner, she looked at me, tapped her nails on the table, and said casually, "My lifestyle isn't cheap. If you want to keep me happy, you have to understand that." That was the moment everything fell into place. I realized this wasn't about a vacation or a restaurant choice. It was about her view of love and life. She didn't want a partner to grow with. She wanted someone who could sustain a lifestyle she thought she deserved. And if I couldn't, then she was ready to move on. I sat there in silence, watching as she scrolled through her phone between bites, barely looking at me. The loneliness I felt sitting across from her was worse than any loneliness I had ever felt sitting alone. When I drove her home, she leaned over casually and said, "Thanks for dinner," as if nothing had happened. But inside, I knew everything had. I sat in my car outside her apartment for a long time after she walked away, letting the reality sink in. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. Her words had drawn a line between us, and I finally understood that line was never going to disappear. Over the next few weeks, I pulled back. I stopped planning extravagant dates, stopped bending over backwards to impress her, stopped sacrificing my own peace just to keep her satisfied. Instead, I focused on myself, my goals, my savings, my hobbies. I reclaimed the parts of myself that I had been slowly giving away. She noticed quickly. Her texts became shorter, her calls sharper. One evening, she asked me directly, "Why aren't you planning anything special for us anymore?" I took a deep breath and replied calmly, "Because love shouldn't be about money." Her response was immediate, almost like she had been waiting for me to say that. "Then maybe I need someone who can give me what I deserve." That was the final straw. I looked at her and said, "Then maybe you should." The next day I ended it. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she smirked and said coldly, "You'll never find someone like me." At the time, it stung. But as I walked away, I realized she was right. And that was exactly the point. For a while, I heard about her through mutual friends. She had moved on quickly, dating an older man who was wealthy and flaunted it openly. Expensive cars, designer watches, lavish trips abroad. It looked like she had upgraded to the lifestyle she always talked about. Her social media was full of smiling photos on yachts, clinking champagne glasses, posing in designer dresses at high-end restaurants. At first, I felt a twinge of doubt. Had I truly not been enough? Had she been right all along? But then the stories started to surface. Friends said that behind the glamorous photos, Jessica was struggling. Her new boyfriend was controlling. He ordered for her at restaurants, told her what to wear, and decided who she could or couldn't see. Yes, he paid for everything, but every payment came with strings attached. One friend confided to me that Jessica had admitted, "It feels like I'm living in a golden cage." Those words stuck with me. She had gotten the lifestyle she said she deserved, but at the cost of her freedom and respect. Meanwhile, my life began to flourish without the weight of her expectations. I took trips I had always wanted, not lavish resorts, but road trips to the mountains, camping by lakes, solo drives along the coast. I reconnected with friends, spent weekends doing things that brought me real joy, and slowly built a life that felt steady and true. My finances recovered. My spirit felt lighter, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Months later, karma did what I never could. Her perfect world started crumbling. The older boyfriend she had chosen didn't see her as a partner. He saw her as an accessory, someone to stand beside him and make his life look shinier. She had traded real care and love for appearances, and now she was paying the price. She had laughed at my simpler life, said I couldn't afford her, But what she ended up with was far worse. A life paid for, but empty. One evening, out of the blue, I got a text from Jessica. It was short but heavy. She said, "I miss you. You actually cared about me. He doesn't." For a split second, old memories flooded back. Her laughter, our drives, the small moments that once felt real. But then, just as quickly, I remembered the look on her face when she said, "You'll never be able to afford the life I deserve." That wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. That was who she truly was. I sat with my phone in my hand, thinking about all the things I could say, all the feelings I could unpack. But in the end, I knew there was only one word that mattered. I typed goodbye and hit send. And for the first time since that night she said those words, I felt completely free. If you've read this far, thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that show how life always finds a way to reveal the truth.